How is everybody doing today? It's a solo episode. I'll start that off with the fact that we're doing solo today. It's Easter weekend here in the United States, so that means that it's kind of tough to get a guest. So the times you can't get a guest, you get just me. And to be upfront about what we're doing here, we're going to be talking about intellectual property. Does it actually matter? And kind of things that have been going on lately. We've seen some things happen, and primarily they're not good. So we've had kind of a big stir lately on Twitter about the Creality cloud system that they're doing, and the fact that basically a non-trivial portion of the models on there are absolutely stolen. They're being uploaded by people without the authorization, and we end up going after with DMCA takedowns, filing requests for takedown, and Creality just doesn't give a damn. So what can the average maker do? Even further, we're going to move into the Honda issue that's going on right now, where Honda issued blanket cease and desist and DMCA takedowns to every major repository for anything involving Honda. And as someone that drives a 20-year-old Honda that they don't make parts for anymore, right there, Honda, because I now you're going to make me go design everything myself rather than just going to printables.com and finding what I need. So, I will never forget the time when my brake pedal switch failed and I was able to print it and install it faster than what it took for my battery to die. So I'm going to call that a win overall. But let's talk about what intellectual property is first, because that's really the thing we got to start with here. Because if we don't have a basis and understanding of what the hell IP is and why it should matter to you, then we're not going to move forward in a direction that makes sense, right? So intellectual property involves something that you produce and you put either under a Creative Commons license, or you patent, copyright, trademark, or leave it in trade secret so you're not distributing it. The other ones involve some form of distribution, but ultimately without that distribution, it remains a trade secret. So let's talk about kind of what we're going through right now, right? This entire 3D printing industry is based upon open source, right? We love open source, okay? Open source is pretty great, but open source doesn't work all the time. Hey, Shane, how you doing? We see we got Ryan76 in here. John Stearns hanging out as well. Guys, if you have any questions, comments, whatever, put them in the comments here on YouTube, and we'll try to address them. And if I can figure this out, maybe we'll post a link for people to join in and chat, but I'm not so sure I want to give that ability all this quickly. But anyways, with IP, right, as a for-profit business and companies that are for-profit, releasing things in open source is quite literally asking for everything that you've worked on to be stolen. E3D is the perfect example of this, right? The V6. Everybody knows the V6. And if you don't know the V6, hi, welcome to the 3D printing industry. My name is Grant. You should like and subscribe. I'll be your guide for the day. It's going to get a little weird, I promise, but we're going to get through it together. I also promise. E3D produced the V6, which was 100% open source. I mean, literally, I have some of them literally hanging out, a legit one and a clone one. And I bet if I took the legit one and made it back to factory, you'd have a hard time telling which is which, other than the random weird rosish gold coloring of this heatsink. But what they did is they said, let's build an industry upon open source, where this has kind of been our theme the entire time, right? The RepRap project was designed around self-replicating robots that were built out of 2D printer parts and some jankness. Not gonna lie, those were pretty jank back in the day. And we figured it out, right? It took us a little bit of time, but we got it to a point where these machines are now reasonably reliable. And companies like E3D have kind of been there supporting as early as, I think, like 2010 is when E3D started to kind of come up in the industry itself. But what we're running into here is that the IP of these companies, and even though E3D put it in open source, they were kind of asking for it to get stolen. I don't think they recognized the damage that it would have on their company, right? Every one of you that have been in this industry for more than a couple of days know the geometric Chinese company that most people have bought stuff from. I am also in that group. I can't sit here on a pedestal and say, well, I've never bought things from them. I absolutely have, before I really understood the implications of it toward E3D. What was happening was companies overseas were producing parts that were suboptimal, but still okay, all things considered, and just releasing it onto the market for a third of the price, which means they're going to gobble up the market share, right? Unfortunately, this is an industry where it's not the easiest, group of people to work around, right? Our industry kind of doesn't like patents because of Stratasys. I'm going to call out Stratasys on this, a name and shame game here, because I firmly believe that they are the reason why we kind of hate patents. Now, back in the day, right, 3D printing was first patented. The patent was filed in 1982, granted in 1984, George Orwell would be so proud, by Chuck Hull of 3D Systems, who is still to this day on the board of 3D Systems. So what exactly does that mean? That patent protected all of the rights to stereolithography, which is what the patent surrounded, for 20 years. That is a long friggin' time. That issue is that what 3D Systems does and what Stratasys did is that they took that IP and said, no, we're not going to license it. We're not going to let anybody use it. And it stifled the industry. As soon as some of these patents started expiring, we're seeing exponential growth in the industry. But without those patents, they can't really protect their intellectual property. And as publicly traded companies, that's bad for business, right? As a publicly traded company, your fiduciary duty, your duty that you must uphold legally, is to your shareholders. So if you're not a private company and you are releasing things in open source, you could potentially be in some trouble here, right? So how the hell do we get through this? Licensing. We've talked about this like over a year ago with David Stein, where we went through what licensing can look like. But a lot of the companies have said, no, we're not going to license it. So makers have had to find unique ways around the problem, like the big Stratasys patent surrounding fused deposition modeling, which is also copywritten and trademarked by Stratasys. That's why we use the term FFF rather than FDM, because FDM is protected, whereas fused filament fabrication, FFF, is not. It gets a little slimy here, but things like the motors inside of a heated build chamber was fully protected by Stratasys. So what did companies do? They found ways to put on some sort of guides to enable the heat to still stay within the chamber. It got messy, right? And now those patents are finally expiring. We're seeing a lot of machines come out with active chamber heaters. Wow, it's like that actually helps the industry. And what did Stratasys do with them? They produced their Fortis line, they produced their Dimension 1200 line, and they didn't do a whole lot. These were absolutely all on the big boy side of things. Had they allowed reasonable licensing to companies like Prusa Research, as much as I can't stand them, Creality, FlashForge, let's see, Titan Robotics would have been pretty cool to see some of that stuff come out of, Raise 3D, Ultimaker. I think we would have seen a lot more growth in this industry slowly rather than this immediate growth as companies are waiting for these things to expire. We got same old Shane hanging out here saying, where I work, I would get support requests for people who bought clone machines and trying to figure out what to do with their machine, as the clone companies had zero support. And that's not exactly fair. We see that here a lot too, where people will buy printers from others, call me like it's somehow my problem, and then balk at me when I want to charge them to fix it. It's a business, baby. I'm sorry. Ain't nothing I can do about that. you can't easily run a viable business. John Stern says it's simple economics. You can't run a viable business if your competitors can undercut you. It's not exactly true, but inherently it is true, right? Companies that are brand new to the market, that are going to be grossly more expensive than others, are going to have a hard time getting involved, right? Unless you're doing something that's different. Last week, we interviewed Dan from Slice Engineering. Slice came out of the market, or came into the market, I should say, with not only a patent, but a premium product at a premium price. Like the Mosquito was something like $140, double the price of an E3D V6, but it touted things like one-handed nozzle change that the Revo has been getting a lot of press for. But I think because the industry still hadn't kind of gotten its understanding or its feet wet for the patents itself, that they just kind of immediately said, screw you, we're not going to accept any patents at all. Go to hell. And that hurt Slice. And now we're seeing that patents can be useful if they're utilized appropriately. But as makers, right, patents are really fucking expensive, okay? To give you an idea, we just made another deal with another patent attorney. I'm excited. We have another patent attorney that's going to be coming on and helping us out. He does not charge by the hour. He's a flat rate of $15,000. And that is a metric shitload of money. And yes, you can get patents for cheaper elsewhere. I'm not here to help our clients get the cheapest patents. I'm here to get them ones that actually work. There's a big deal and a big discrepancy between that. But cool, okay, you get a patent. Congratulations, you got a nice piece of paper with a gold seal on it that says you had this idea first. But you still have to defend it. And if companies like Creality, because I'm going to keep calling them out, go through and say, we don't give a shit about your patent, you now have to go after them. I have a video Wednesday about the IP issues with Creality specifically. But the big thing that's been going on there is they've not only stolen source code from Artec, or allegedly stolen source code from Artec, but they're also now repurposing models from creators that sell them, that own the copyrights, that own all of the intellectual property inherent with a system like this, and putting it on their Creality cloud service. I am not going to link to it. We will link to it in the Wednesday video, but spoiler alert, it's going to take you to a Rickroll because I think that's going to be funny, and I'm an asshole. And it's my channel, and I can do what I want. Because I don't want to give them any extra business. Because I know that making a video about this is going to cause people to go there and try to buy models out from people that are doing it for less than the actual creators. And what does that mean? It means you're stealing. It's literal theft. Literal theft. These are people that have worked their entire lives to build up a portfolio, a knowledge base, and everything like that. And you are stealing food off of their plate. It's not fair. And we as makers can file DMCA takedown requests. But for companies that don't have a United States nexus or a nexus in the country that you're located in, you might as well just throw a wadded ball of paper at them. They don't have to comply. And for creators, for makers, for designers, especially those in the digital world that are producing files like my good buddy Fotis Mint, my good buddy Wexter, and so many others out there. Of course, Wexter was a previous guest. You guys can go find that episode with Vedran. That was a lot of fun. They have no recourse. And Fotis Mint himself has said that he's stopped caring about the copiers because there's quite literally nothing that he can do. His hands are tied, and why bother wasting time, effort, and energy dealing with the bullshit of trying to protect your intellectual property? And that is terrible. To me, that is so abysmal. Why would someone want to keep working in this industry if there's no protection around what they're able to do? Can we all just agree, please, please, that we just act as good faith human beings, not be dicks to each other, and say, hey, I want to use your file in some promotional stuff. Do you mind if we do it? Sure, go ahead, make sure you credit us. Or, no, I really don't want to do that. And then you go find somebody else. Don't just steal models, right? And yes, there are times where companies will just use the models without saying something. They'll credit the designer, and it's kind of a backhanded, all right, fine, whatever. But that's not really the way that it should be done. Okay? Um, and it's not about a suicidal race to the bottom. We've seen this so many times with the intellectual property specifically around Prusa. Look, all right, full disclosure, I'm a Prusa fanboy. If you haven't noticed, it's the only printers you ever see behind me. Yes, there are other printers in this room. There's a Fusion 3 up there. There's a Lulzbot somewhere over there. There's some other Chinese companies that I don't want to say anything about because I'm reviewing their printer and quite frankly, I can't get it to work and I don't like it, yada yada. But I'm kind of an all Prusa game here when it comes to FDM because guess what? They work. And a lot of companies are taking that i3 design and they're going forth and creating printers that they're slapping the Prusa name on, and Prusa's having to spend thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, if not more than that, protecting the intellectual property, the copyright, and the trademark around the Prusa name itself, right? The big thing with patents, copyrights, and trademarks are they can be invalidated. Yeah. It's not great. Invalidation is something that is a big concern here in the United States. Getting a patent is great, but if you have no ability whatsoever to protect it, then you don't have a patent. You have an expensive piece of paper that you get to hang on a wall and feel good about yourself. And I personally don't give a shit about that. It's why we tell inventors that come through, if you don't have $100,000 of liquid capital or an investor with that much money laying around, what you don't need is a patent. What you need are sales. But it's complicated, right? Because it goes beyond that. And I'm going to specifically kind of start talking more about the digital side. Because at least on the physical side, you can know what the clones are, right? It's not going to use the same branding because it gets sticky there. Yes, someone might stick a Prusa name on it, but it's very clear it's not from Joseph Prusa, right? It's not on their website. But here's the deal, right? A mom, a dad, a grandpa, grandma, aunt, uncle, whatever, they don't know it. And if little Timmy says, I would love a Prusa, they're going to go to Amazon.com. They should be going to smile.amazon.com where you can donate 0.5% to a 501c3 of your choice. It doesn't cost anything extra. It's just free money for a 501c3. Why wouldn't you be doing this? But they're going through all of this, and the parents don't know any better. The grandparents, aunts, uncles, they don't know any better. And they're getting little Timmy something that little Timmy might think is a real Prusa or a real whatever. It's a clone. And even further, it might even be an ANET A8 where it's a house fire, right? And companies have a really hard time getting through all of these things. And so to kind of go over the main topic of this, does intellectual property matter? Yes, the answer is yes. But it matters a lot less if you can't defend it. And that's what's complicated about this whole procedure here, is the defense of it, right? If a company like Creality decides that they're going to allow people to upload models to their website that are taken, right? Let's say you are a 3D modeler, right? Let's say John Stern, same old Shane, Jacobs, Stearns, sure, Staines, I don't know, Stearns, Tarsman013, and others are all 3D modelers. You guys are working your asses off to put food on your table. You're releasing models via a Patreon where people are paying a few bucks every month to support you. And then you happen to see these files up on sites like My Mini Factory, Thangs, Printables, Thingiverse. And all of those, you can easily send a DMCA takedown request. You reach out to the right people. Maybe you tweet at someone to get a little bit of exposure there. And you try. These companies are, by and large, going to say, oh yeah, dude, you're totally right. Let us nuke this person's account. But it's like a Hydra, right? You cut one head off and two grow back in its place. Tarsman013 says, now at Hogwarts, the defense against the dark intellectual properties. You're not wrong, right? IP is... it's muddy. I apologize. We haven't had AC in the house for almost over a week and a half now, so it is 86 degrees in my office. Excuse me. It's a little... sorry if I look sweaty. It's because I am. Thankfully, the rest of the house is cooler, but yeah, this office is hot. But the problem that we have is the defense, right? When you go to companies that actually give a shit about artists, they're going to quickly nuke the accounts. And even further, people that are being problems over and over and over and over again are going to get their entire IPs blocked. There are some stories about this. I don't think I can actually talk about them publicly, but I know some stories about instances where things like this have happened before. And yeah, it's kind of funny. But we have to look at what intellectual property means to you. If you are just a maker, you might not honestly care about intellectual property all that much. And I don't know if I can blame you. I don't think I can blame you. I actually know I can't blame you, right? It's not your job. You're not an attorney. You don't know this stuff, and that's totally fine. But you have to look at it from the perspective of, if the job that you were doing every single day was something that you were getting paid for, and you were paid for based on the amount of people that used it, and then all of a sudden your method for how you got paid was thrown out the window, we've got ourselves a problem. And you'd be really pissed off that somebody else is stealing the work that you've worked so hard on. Decades of your life training for this moment to release these things, and somebody says, middle fingers to you, I'm gonna steal your idea, I don't give a damn, F off. You'd be objectively pretty effing pissed. And there's no one here that would sit there and say, oh, well, yeah, you deserved it, you piece of shit. John Stern. Grant is in a heater chamber. Good job, Stratasys' patent expired, or they'd be knocking on his door. That's a video topic if we could put a printer inside of an enclosure and use the sun to heat it. Anyways. Video topic idea. Someone put that in my Discord or something. But if you don't put yourself into the field of the designers themselves that are having these problems, the IP issue may not be so black and white to you, right? It's like if someone just came and copied your custom car and then claimed it was theirs, right? Or stole your photos from Instagram and said it was yours. Those are very obvious intellectual property. But if you're not at the end of the getting stolen from stick, it's kind of hard to look at it and say, I care. Right? So to me, intellectual property means it's something that I've been working on, and I need to protect it because I want to make money from it, right? If you're releasing an open source, ultimately, intellectual property is null and void. You have decided that it is better off in the industry. Things like the seatbelt was something I believe that Volvo was looking at patenting, and I believe they did patent it, and then they opted to open it in open source, and it caused a lot of problems. Maybe it was Ford? I forget. There's a whole movie about it, right? About all of this. And there's a lot of movies out there actually about patenting and inventors and all of that. But that was a bad business decision, but it ultimately saved lives, right? Imagine that in today's world, where a company made a decision to save lives rather than something that was good for their bottom line. I'm not looking at anybody specifically. Ford Pinto, Toyota Prius. There was an Audi that had an issue like that. There was a Volkswagen. All of these companies ultimately decided that in most cases it was cheaper to pay out the wrongful death lawsuits because they didn't want to fix the problem. That's a fucking problem. And look, I'm a capitalist like the rest of you. I have a business making 3D printed parts for people. We help inventors go from idea to reality. But I will tell you, there is no market that we work in that is more like Dale Gribble, right? Constantly paranoid at everybody around them than the inventors, because they've watched inventor after inventor after inventor after inventor get screwed out of their life's work. And when we as makers allow companies like Creality to get away with this bullshit, and according to Shane, for well over a year, they're just ignoring this because they don't have a nexus in the United States. But they kind of do. then who wins? It's not us, the makers, it's them. The company realizes they can get away with it. And I agree with Filament Frenzy. I think his name is Tom. I'm going to probably get that wrong, and someone will correct me in the comments. But Tom said, we as influencers, as reviewers, need to put our foots down and say that, yes, talking about Creality printers gets us views, but it's more about the industry. It's about the makers, right? A little over a year ago, we started, actually 13 months ago to the day, we kind of officially started this YouTube channel with my video on Cricut, where I ranted about that it's not one thing you don't want to piss off are the makers. But for some reason, because Creality has an okay printer that is bottom of the barrel cheap, like Micro Center sells them in store for $100 on sale. Like, that's ridiculous that you can get a 3D printer for $100. That is okay. It's not very good, but it can make stuff, right? And people buy it because it's cheap. They don't understand some of the back end of it, right? So the video title that we're planning on is Creality doesn't give a shit about intellectual property. It'll be SH asterisk T. About you, about intellectual property, about something like that. And there was somebody on Twitter, let me see who it was, that tagged me saying, I was lost in text, said, by the way, if any of Maker's Muse, 3D Musketeers, or Tom's 3DP, or any other creator wants to make a video of the Honda issue, I hereby surrender any rights to the video title, Absence Makes the Part Go Honda. First off, that's a phenomenal video title. A+ for that. Yeah. Creality doesn't give 3 Fs. I don't know. I know what one of them is. I don't know what the other 2 are. And so let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about the Honda thing, because this did just kind of come through. The article is on the drive. I'll post it here in the YouTube chat so you guys can see it. Oh, FFF, right. Fuse filament fabrication. That's actually pretty good. I'm going to give you credit for that, John Stern. That's pretty good. Honda orders big takedown of Honda-related 3D printing models from maker communities. Is this technically okay? Yes, it is technically okay. You're being a dick, but it's technically okay. So the big thing with IP is, generally speaking, if the person that is utilizing something that you own is not making money from it, you kind of just leave it alone, right? If a company is using it for advertising, get permission, right? The company needs to get permission from you to utilize your stuff if they're using it for advertising. But if it's just like someone 3D printing something for their own personal use, no, that's actually perfectly covered under Creative Commons. Okay, that is perfectly covered under that. Honda said, no, we're gonna take all of it down. And as someone that has a 20-year-old Honda that has gone on to, at the time, Prusa printers, now printables, I've used Thingiverse for it, because, of course, Thingiverse at the time had a much bigger repository. I don't know who's got the biggest repository now. And it's not a measuring contest, okay? You know, there are average-sized repositories out there, and that's just fine. It's just fine. It's fine. It's fine. So Honda said, no, if it's involving our company, we don't want it. Now, if you are an Etsy seller and you're selling something with a Honda logo on it, they have every right, and they should be going after you to take down that stuff, right? So what are people going to do, right? They're going to come up with a fake name for a Honda, right? You know, so a 2002... So I have a 2002 Honda Accord EX V6. Okay, they have glass transmissions. I don't want to hear about it. But the big thing about cars is over time, things break. It's 2002. It's 20 years old. Next year, I'm buying it a beer. And companies can say, well, I don't want you printing parts for it. I want you to buy them from us. Well, Honda was going to take 3 weeks to get me the part that would turn off my brake lights when I wasn't depressing the brake pedal. And yes, I could just get some hot glue, get some pennies, and build my own stop on my own. But that's ridiculous when I have 3D printers, and I decided that I would try to print the part and install it before the battery on my car died. And I was able to do it. operates, as John Stern says, in fair use. And a lot of the models in these communities operate under fair use. Now, there can be some sketchy things where if there are parts that involve safety measures for a vehicle, like a seatbelt, airbag system, something like that, that's a security and safety problem where someone could install a 3D printed part, it fails for whatever reason, they get hurt, they sue Honda. Honda has every right to go after people that are doing that. That's a health and safety concern. That's not an intellectual property concern. But taking everything off of the modeler websites is kind of against good faith, if you will. Fonda cup holders. Jane Fonda. Oh my gosh, that'd be funny if we used Jane Fonda as the cup holders. Oh, that would be hilarious. But if a company doesn't make the part, never has, and as far as we can tell, has no plan on ever making the part, they have no right to it. Now, if you put their logo on it, you can say it's compatible, and you must make sure that you use the proper registered trademark logos, copyright, that kind of stuff, right? And you must put the proper disclaimers in there. And if you're not doing any of that, okay, yeah, you're kind of violating it. But a blanket takedown like this is not in good faith, in my opinion. Now, does this actively hurt anybody? Other than kind of the industry as a whole, I don't think it hurts individual people, right? It gets in the way for companies like, and I'm going to use Prusa because the article in the Drive specifically mentions Prusa, so I'm going to utilize them. It is tough for them because when lawyers send a big cease and desist, a C&D, immediately it is within the best interest of the company to comply with it and then figure out if they want to continue complying, right? So you instantly pull the models down and you start running damage control, right? Is this okay? Does it make sense? What are we supposed to do? What's our plan? That's the damage control you start doing. And if you find ultimately that you're in the right, put it back up, roll the dice. Like John Stern says, a lot of lawyers will send cease and desist notices just to scare people who don't have the money to fight it. You're absolutely right. And some companies won't even send C&Ds. The Big Mouse here in Florida, I'm not even going to mention their name because they are notorious for not sending cease and desist, but sending subpoenas. So is the company that makes video games with a famous plumber in it. They are also well known for not sending cease and desist. They send subpoenas, right? And what they're trying to do is make a statement, right? It's not about the person. It's about sending a message. And if they can send a message, everyone else backs off. Unfortunately, this industry is kind of in that weird world of we've kind of built this entire industry on giving the middle fingers to other companies, right? RepRap was started on giving the middle finger to Stratasys. That's like quite literally why RepRap was a thing. And the self-replicating robot, but it was very much a middle finger to Stratasys because no one can afford a $250,000 printer as a hobbyist, right? So I guess Shane is being obvious of who he works for. Same old Shane works for Prusa. He said, we were one of the few companies asked for the takedown. We complied with the request. We did it out of respect, for lack of a better term, per the company, if that makes sense. And it absolutely does, right? You're going to immediately comply and then figure out what is going on. Apparently, it's still ongoing, so I don't want to mention too much about it. We're going to touch about it on the Wednesday video, where we kind of go into this a little bit more, but it's going to be way more structured than Grant ranting for about an hour on this. But when we look at what Creality is doing with the maker side of things, we have to take into account that it's not a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company that is claiming to be hurt. It is individual makers that are creating digital files, that are having them stolen, and sometimes even resold for less than they themselves are selling for. And I want to give credit where credit is due. It is because of Shane that I learned about this. And Shane is kind of I met Shane recently. It was really cool. I haven't really met other like big makers. I met Uncle Jesse randomly, a sushi restaurant in Lutz. But that was serendipitous. It was not planned. I planned to go meet Shane before he moved back to Prague. And it was cool to kind of talk about what intellectual property means with him. And to see him fighting for this on Twitter kind of got me riled up in a way that not many things get me riled up these days. Because ultimately, it is about doing the right thing. Right? So if you've never had a personal experience where someone violated your IP, you're not going to know what it feels like. I have. Not explicitly personally, but when we've had companies that we've worked with get ripped off where we have to provide data for litigation. But I can tell you we've certainly had companies that we've done work for that haven't paid us. And it feels like a punch to the gut that I've been working for months, sometimes years on things, and you don't have the common fucking decency to either pay your bill or at least respect the terms that we came involved in. It doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't feel good. Okay, so Shane actually learned about it from Stian. I'm not going to pronounce the rest of his name, but yeah, Stian. All right, fine, I'll try it. Ervik Walvag. Sure. He makes those little Easter egg toy models with the small toys inside. He got screwed over pretty hardcore. And I know that he knows what this feels like. I DM'd him. He didn't want to comment in any of the videos. And if you are a maker and you're watching this before I film the Wednesday video, which is going to be in the next like 24 to 48 hours, please reach out to me if you want to have a quote, if you want to be involved in that video. I'd love to get some extra support on this because I want to make sure that we're doing it right. I don't have models out there that I'm charging for currently. So if people steal my models, I don't really care. They're open source. Whatever. My logo's literally on everything. I don't care. But if that's not the case and you are trying to make a living off of it, it really matters. And so I know what this feels like. It feels like someone is stealing food off of your plate. Because that's what they're actually doing. Right? When I first got into this industry, intellectual property was not a big deal. Right? And I don't know if for some of you that maybe it wasn't when you got in, maybe you're learning about it a little bit more. I don't know. IP was, and I still think is, not as big of a deal as it should be. We don't seem to care about it. And we let companies like that geometric company from China get away with stealing IP. To go back to Creality, they are currently being sued right now by Artec 3D. And make no mistake here, I do work, well, I'm trying to work with Artec on something. But they are currently being sued. I'm going to post the docket so you guys can read it. That is the docket that I just posted for the Creality versus Artec lawsuit. And read through it. Artec is claiming that employees from Artec 3D were not only poached, but were poached with source data to build Creality Studio, Creality Slicer program, or Creality Scanning program, which does make me want to try it to see if it'll work with my Artec Eva or my Artec Ray, because that would be kind of cool, honestly, and would save me some cash. But I do pay for Artec Studio. I wish I didn't have to. Please, Artec, I would love to work with you guys. I think it'd be a really fun set of videos, but whatever. This further issue becomes where, all right, they have another claim that they've copywritten the idea of a scanning software using the name Studio. and Creality Studio is copying that. That's a name change. It's no big deal. That's a C&D, but they're kind of lopping it into this one bigger lawsuit. And the reason that they can actually sue Creality is because of Kickstarter. Those of you that were involved in the CR Scan Lizard Kickstarter got an email stating that there is active litigation. This is the active litigation. And because of that, Kickstarter is removing it. I don't know what's happening to backer money currently. I guess Kickstarter is probably going to hold it in escrow until the court case is either settled or come to a resolution. I don't really know the provisions for that just yet. But the only reason that Artec can go after them is because Creality is now doing business in New York, where Kickstarter is located. And that effectively gives them a New York nexus. So I'm curious if now is kind of the time for people to go after Creality, because one company already has. And I believe this sounds like a great opportunity for a class action lawsuit, but as always, I am not a lawyer. Consult a lawyer before you do things like this. Jacob Stern says, growing up with a patent attorney as a father, it's been ingrained in my head from a very young age about the value of intellectual property. But I think a lot of us, because of the way, and I blame Amazon for this completely, that we look at intellectual property, we look at things as, if it's cheap, it's for me. If it's free, it's for me. Free 99 is my favorite price. And we don't look at when we're getting something for free, when we're sailing the 7 seas and pirating software and hardware, and, we're buying things through shady resellers. What is that doing to the main company, right? And if it's for Adobe, I don't particularly care. I hate Adobe's pricing model. Go do whatever you want to do. If your software falls off the back of the truck, it ain't my effing problem. But for smaller people like creators, you're stealing. You're actively stealing. Okay? If you were a Fotis mint and you fought for so long to keep your models secure, safe, and inside of your Patreon, and you've gotten so disheartened about fighting and failing that you've just given up for the past couple of years, when you know in your heart that people are stealing from you, that's not cool. Jacob Stern says the age of LimeWire and Napster. And they got the ban hammer put on them because it was a very clear and obvious violation of intellectual property, copyrights, trademarks, and patents. Right? And I know you don't care, Fotis, but I'm using you as my poster child for this because you should care. It's not your fault that you don't care. You don't care because you've fought and fought and fought, and it doesn't get anywhere because these companies don't give a shit. And that's a problem. It's a problem. It's a problem that companies like Creality are getting rich off the backs of people that they're not paying. It's a problem. Right? Same Old Shane says there have been designers who closed up shop because of the model theft. Yeah. If you are constantly having to fight people that are stealing things from you, you're going to give up, right? Mark Rober isn't doing his porch pirate thing just for the views. He's getting great views on it. God bless him. But he's doing it to try to scare off porch pirates because people are so frustrated with others stealing their packages because guess what? It's easy. It is easy for someone to run up to your house, steal your package, and run away with it. If you're not home to receive it, it's very difficult. To the fact where Amazon has started putting lockers all over so that there's a local Amazon locker to you where you can go get your stuff where it's actually secure. We shouldn't have to do that, but inherently some people suck. Some people suck. Now, the fun part is that Creality Cloud sent Fotis Mint an email, and he answered them with an email with a DMCA report. Beautiful. I love your style, Fotis. I've always loved your style. And it is a shame that companies don't care, right? And the larger creators like Titan Forge and some of the ones that are doing, that have staff of people producing tens of thousands of dollars worth of models on Patreon every single month. Are they going to necessarily feel if one or two of their files get out there in public domain? Probably not, right? Is it going to grossly affect them? Probably not. But is their claim to the intellectual property any less valid? No. It's not. Foda says, newsflash, most artists don't care anymore. This is old news, really. Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And I agree with Tom, I agree with Shane that we have to stand up. We as a community have shown that we have the power to enact change when we all band together and we do something right. So this is kind of my call to you guys as the community. We need to start calling out those people on their issues. And I don't know how we can do it appropriately, right? Because when you call them out, especially as people with good followings, I don't have a big following, right? There's many people here in the comments that have followings with orders of magnitude greater than mine. But when we say at Creality Cloud, stop stealing my models, it is going to cause some people to go to Creality Cloud's website and download your models. And so how do we as makers allow ourselves to defend ourselves without the any press is good press problem that we have in this industry? That is really what I'm trying to figure out. I've been talking with a lawyer about this, and I'm going to be sending him this video as well as the Wednesday video that's going to come out talking all about it. I would love to see some way that makers, creators, and even content creators can protect their intellectual property to the point where people like Destin Sandlin of Smarter Everyday don't have to watermark their videos anymore so that people don't steal them. Creality is doing this themselves. Yes, there are some cases where others are uploading copywritten or protected files, but Creality themselves are uploading models that they don't own. They're not responding to the legit takedown requests that are legit. And unless they have servers in the United States, there's probably not much that we can do, right? I don't really have a good solution for this. I know people have talked about utilizing the blockchain for 3D models, and maybe that's not me, right? I'm not the guy to say, let's use blockchain. I'm going to say it's not a bad idea, but I'm not a professional in this whatsoever. But I'm someone that doesn't mind talking about tough subjects, knowing that these videos are going to actively create where I am blackballed by Creality, and I could not personally give a shit. If that hurts my channel, so what? I don't care. Until Creality fixes these problems and puts a stance out to it, I will not review Creality products, period. In fact, I'm going to actively start a video series to show you how to remove as much of Creality crap from your Creality printers as possible. We have to keep yelling. We as creators have to keep yelling, because if our voices are falling on deaf ears, we must get louder. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and if that means the wheel has to run over the company itself, fine. I would love to see Naomi Wu take a stance on this, because Naomi is someone who does take a pretty hard stance on intellectual property from time to time, to a point where she's walked into businesses that are not following on IP and done something about it. Naomi is also someone who's had or has a relationship with Creality. They have a printer called the CR30, which is Naomi Wu's print mill. I want to see Naomi take a stand and do something about this, because if there's anyone with a voice large enough, it's her. She has the contacts that very few of the rest of us possess. So, Naomi, I'm calling on you. You're probably one of the most well-equipped individuals in this industry to say something. I want you to. I'm calling you out, because I don't think that Creality is going to listen to any of us unless we all band together. And unfortunately, I don't think that we as a community have a large enough following that we can do it ourselves. Now, I don't really care what you feel about Naomi. It doesn't matter to me. But we all know she's got the relationship, so maybe there's something that can be done. As Foda says, piracy will always be there. Telegram, Facebook groups have everyone's models already in there. But a company like Creality hosting piracy is wow. Same old Shane. Thermal runaway protection. Ain't nobody need that. You're right. No one needs thermal runaway protection. It's not a big deal. Printers catching fire is totally fine. No one cares about printers catching fire. I certainly don't. I had to try. I'm gonna try it on a Creality printer, by the way. We're gonna set a Creality printer on fire next. But yeah, guys, I don't have a solution for this, and that's how this video is going to end, right? The main channel video is going to end the same way, that I don't necessarily have a solution other than keep yelling, keep saying something, keep fighting. Because at this point, if we stop fighting, we lose everything that we've earned thus far. John Stern, maybe schools should teach ethics, including that stolen digital content is still theft that impacts real people. Maybe they should, but they're not even teaching how to balance checkbooks, so I'm not really going to rely on them to be teaching good ethics regarding intellectual property. As Shane says, it is going to take a community effort. We must all band together. And I'm going to call out the big content creators out there as well. You guys, the Joel Tellings, the Tom's 3DP, the people that are much bigger than me, right? We have like 4,500 subscribers. If you're new here, please subscribe. These videos aren't free, and they take a long time and a lot of effort for us to create. But if we all don't utilize our voices to get things out there, nothing's going to change. And those of us that have voices larger than others need to be the ones that are shouting at the top of our lungs, this is not okay. Joseph Grenier, oh wait, I said that wrong. Grenier, maybe. Could an artist DMCA Creality site? They can and they have. And Creality says we don't give a shit. They don't respond to them. And if Creality doesn't have any USA-based servers, there is quite literally nothing that DMCA takedown requests can do. Because it's not enforced in China, specifically a country that is known for having, well, intellectual property rights that are as loose as a $2 pistol. Okay. Like Grinder without the D. Griner. Thank you. Joseph Griner. Appreciate that. There is really nothing, unless we can find a server. If we can find a server in the United States that Creality uses, we can reach out to the hosting provider and say, shut this shit down. Here are all the DMCA takedown requests. And the hosting provider, with enough requests, will dump their support. We can do that. But if they're not utilizing servers in countries that care about intellectual property, then we as makers have to just keep yelling. And Photosmint is kind of right here, that it is unfortunate that the only thing we achieve right now by yelling about this, by creating a commonality around this is not okay, is that we are also backhandedly advertising for them. Hilariously, when I did the video on the model repositories, Creality Cloud did not even show up in my search history, which is good because yeah, they're pretty shitty. But there are people that will go there because they don't know any better. I would call upon makers. This would be a really cool thing. I'd love to figure out how their website functions if you get on the main page based on downloads. Because if you can get on the main page by doing downloads, we should create STL files and use thumbnails say Creality Cloud is stealing, and then create systems that auto-download the models or auto-like them or whatever the system is to get them featured on the main page, and fill their main page with models that are showing the theft. That would be pretty cool. So someone who's considerably smarter than me that can figure out how Creality is doing their algorithm for main page objects, that would be really cool. If we can find ways to flood the system so that people that don't know any better, we can at least attempt to work with them. Even further, those of you that like to play on the nefarious side of things, let's see if there's any holes in their servers. We might be able to just start giving them some extended costs of maintenance. You know, if that's the thing. I'm not telling people to do illegal things. That's not my friggin' job. Y'all do what you all do. Filament Stories, by the way, great channel, says, we have a responsibility to uplift the community, not just passively, but actively in whatever ways we can. I agree. And ultimately, that does mean we're going to give some press to the bad actors. There's no way that we can't do it. But if we sit there and say, fuck you, if you're going to their website and getting their models, maybe we can kind of flush out the bad actors on their own. Photospin says, yeah, this is why I stopped pointing it out. I'm not going to give them traffic as well. It's fair, right? That's a totally valid and fair reason to not talk about this. It pains me to talk about it, right? Although the link to Creality Cloud's website in the description of the Wednesday video is going to take you to a Rickroll. So I feel a little bit better about that I can at least troll some people passively. And it'll be a link that I can track how many people clicked it, so I'll know how many people we Rickrolled. I'll have to update, something in a future video on that. Shane says that there are some files hosted in there that are regularly sold for high amounts of money as they are these massive displays. And that's not fair. Companies like Gambody that produce beautiful models. If you want to see some of the models they do, go look at my buddy Fred. I think it's at the 3D printing on Twitter. He is kind of known for doing Gambody models at like 600% scale. And they're ridiculous. His Star Destroyer is like over 1 meter long, which is crazy. But if those models are being sold by somebody else on Creality Cloud, we've got a problem here, right? It's not okay. Shades that they also featured stolen models on the Creality newsletter. Yeah, not cool, right? Like when Prusa features models in newsletters, they credit the designer, they'll link to the page and all of that. And I don't know if Creality knows any better, right? I'd like to believe that Creality doesn't know any better, but they must know at some point. John Stern brings up a good point, though, that a Star Destroyer is stolen IP. It is. Yeah, it kind of is. If it's not an exact replica and it's 10 to 15% changed and it's not being sold as a registered trademark of Star Wars, there's a fine line here between what is intellectual property and what isn't, right? And considering that the Star Wars franchise is owned by the mouse, we're going to move away from the Star Destroyer as being one that we kind of talk about. It is kind of iffy, right? There are modelers out there that will produce fan art off of TV shows, Marvel, DC, that kind of thing, which is, it is kind of IP theft. Yeah, it is IP theft. And what they're doing is they're saying, we are going to allow you to support us as a designer, and we're just going to release the things that we design that we think are cool. You are not paying for the files. You cannot buy the files. You're supporting us. And that is a way to eke by legally-ish. But yeah, it's muddy. It's fucking muddy. I've said it. There isn't a good answer here. Will Strickland said, I heard from a few legal sources that 15% change isn't a real thing. It isn't. There is not a known value for how much you must change something to skirt IP laws. However, generally with the USPTO, it's somewhere between 8 and 11%. You're generally fine. For patents, at least, it's novel, unique, and non-obvious. So if you can adjust one of those 3 things of the product you're attempting to copy and fix a little bit, then you're not copying it, you're fixing it. I like Fotis's theory here that selling fan art is not illegal. That would be a great answer. Unfortunately, the companies that own the IP seem to feel differently about these things, right? I'm not going to say that selling fan art is legal. I think that selling it for personal use, someone that wants to 3D print it for themselves, totally fine. It's even a little bit iffy when I 3D print things for use in time lapses that we use in videos that are fan art, right? There's some fine lines that we ride there. I don't tag the main companies anymore. I got kind of yelled at for that, so we don't do that anymore. But yeah, it is kind of iffy the way that we kind of deal with this. Yeah, you don't F with the mouse, Shane says. Yeah, you don't. I don't really... I know that I care about it. And I know that a lot of people here care about it. I know that a lot of you care about intellectual property. We as makers have to care about intellectual property. But I think we have to better understand it. If you or someone you know is an IP lawyer, I would love to interview an IP lawyer. I think the closest I could interview an IP lawyer is like 3 weeks away. But I want to interview an IP lawyer about this and really kind of talk about where fan art sits, where 3D printing sits, where issues, because like with what Creality is doing, it's clean cut and dry, it's theft, right? It's clean cut and dry theft. But is fan art where you're not, where you're, it is an artistic representation. Is that IP theft? I don't know. I don't know. Are cosplayers stealing IP? I don't know. I don't know. It is it's a tough one. And then, like Photos is saying, Photos is talking about how if you print one model, then you start casting it, you produce production runs. Now that does absolutely start getting into IP infringement. If you're doing one or two for yourself, maybe you're giving one to a family member, that still falls under personal use. And we've seen these discussions regarding commercial use, right? Is the time lapses that we produce with models like Photuses and Wexters considered commercial use? Because technically, we make money on it. I mean, I think YouTube Shorts pay out about $1 for every 5,000 views they get. So it's technically a commercial use, but I'm paying way more than that to make the part and all that. And I use it to, I think the models are cool, but then I take them to trade shows and I'll show off what we can print. Is that commercial use? Well, it kind of is. So where do you draw the line between what do we accept and what do we don't? Where do we look the other way and where do we don't? Because if we're going to be black and white in some areas like Creality, how can we also hold ourselves accountable so that we're not hypocrites? Because if there's one thing that I don't like, it's being a hypocrite. I like to be able to stand on my platform and say, this is my stance, and I'm abiding by it. Will Strickland says, it is probably IP theft, the cosplay. But it would be hard to show harm to the IP holder. It doesn't matter when the mouse ties you up in court. Oh, it doesn't matter when the mouse ties you up in court until you run out of money. He's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. Stand on your heated bed. Don't stand on your heated bed. Unless you have a printer big enough to do that. Like, otherwise, don't do it. Yeah, cosplay is kind of IP theft. Shit, cosplay is IP theft. Yeah, and I guess to really prove IP theft, you also have to be able to prove that there's been a significant monetary loss. So is Marvel and DC seeing a significant loss because of fan art that is produced by content or by 2D model or 3D modelers? I don't think they are. Now, if they wanted to commission one of these guys, say, hey, you're absolutely violating IP, but we love the work you're doing, we'd love to commission you. At that point, you're pulling down all your stuff that has to deal with them. But it's kind of like this ethical hacking thing, right? Where is it legal or is it not legal? Where does that stand? I would love to see the Mouse, Marvel, DC, others start sponsoring people that make these models. They're not going to stop them, and there's no reason for them to. It is easy, relatively free press for them. However, they look at it as a black or white issue. Is this our IP? Yes. That means you're stealing it. We're going to sue you. But then we run into, well, it's fully sculpted from scratch. And yes, it's in the likeness of Captain America. It's in the likeness of Peacemaker or something like that. But is it taking away from what you're doing? And I'm a reasonable person, or at least I like to believe I'm a reasonable person. So the reasonable person standard, which is used commonly in court, I would say that no, it is not creating any detrimental effect to the mouse, to Marvel, DC, or others, because they are not actively playing in the market of releasing digital files. And therefore, there is no loss to them because they're not doing it. And yes, the mouse did cull Thingiverse, like Shane is saying. That is true. They absolutely went through a great culling on Thingiverse, and I think they had a lot of reason to do it, right? They absolutely sell the mouse, right? And if you are copying the mouse, or you're doing the mouse ears, right? There are lots of Etsy sellers that make the mouse ears, and I'm surprised they haven't been sued yet, because that is absolutely something that the mouse does. And there's absolute reason for them to go after them for IP infringement. 100%. And yet people still do it and they roll the dice. I don't personally understand that. That's why we're not in the business of selling models. We are in the business of making parts for people and content, I guess. But like, we're going to be going out and scanning cars, right? So we're going to be training ourselves, training staff on using the 3D scanners. And we're going to bring you guys along to be videos about utilizing the 3D scanners. And we're going to release the models that we scan. But I'm going to release it on a pay what you want. I think I have to have a minimum. I think it's like $1 minimum for it. But if you want to pay $10 for it, you think it's worth $10, spend $10. If you want to spend $1 on it, spend $1. I want people to, if they want to buy it, that they spend what they think is reasonable. I don't want to set what I think is reasonable. And I know the models are going to get out there. They're just crash cars. I don't care. Is it going to suck that I use 80 grand of material to get it? Yeah, it's going to suck. But to me, it's about, you know, creating the content side of it. Oh, John Stern says, this is why Google doesn't want Googling to become a verb that would put their name in the public domain. Huh. Interesting. Will Strickland says, I think that court precedents require them to aggressively protect their IP at all times, or else they risk losing them. That is correct. Yeah, it's absolutely correct. And I realize that these companies understand that the 3D printing industry exists, and I think a lot of them realize that it's more work than it's worth. Is the 3D printing industry, are, you know, fan art creators going to go after Marvel to invalidate their trademarks and copyrights because their fan art has been out there long enough? No, they don't give a shit. John Stern says shorter terms on IP ownership is one good idea. Get things in the public domain for the benefit of society. I don't necessarily know about that. I think when we talked to, oh God, David Stern, I think? David Stein. It was the IP lawyer that we talked to about 1.5 years ago about all of this. His way of doing it, I think, was pretty good, where a company will have IP, but they will release it as licenses to all of those that they want to be able to do it. You can apply for a license, they can say yes or no, and there is no cost to this license, right? So if they wanted to allow modelers that they thought did good to produce fan art, maybe there's a royalty agreement or something like that, then they're fine. But then that way they kind of control who gets access to that IP. I think that a lot of 3D modelers would agree that that's not a bad move, right? If somebody wanted to sell something on behalf of a designer, let's say like Fotis, you're in the chat, so I'm going to call you out a bunch. So let's say I wanted to sell a model that Fotis made. I can do that. There's a tier on his Patreon where I can join it, and then I have the right for reproduction. But he limits how many people can do it, and I think there's also, you know, some amount of, I need to know who you are. No, your prints aren't going to suck. but distribution of the assets, the raw assets. I have never seen somebody allow that, right? We're looking at, it shouldn't be there. Oh, okay, I didn't know. I thought you still had it. That was a mistake. Well, it happens. We're looking at doing a big Out of Marbles tower for a video. I am waiting on some feedback from them because I want to make it portable so I can bring it places. That I'm reaching out to them and say, hey, we want to do this for a video. Are you okay with this? We want to, link to your stuff in the description. I want to show all the prints because it's all going to be done on the time-lapse printer. I want to do that kind of stuff. And they never reached back out, but I guess they have an active Discord, so I'll have to go join their Discord and be a part of it there. But the problem that we see here is that, like, literally every single time I do a badass time-lapse of something from Fotis, from Wexter, from whoever, somebody inevitably asks for the STL in the comments. Every freaking time. When it is very clear in the description, you can go to the Patreon, support the creator, and you get access to the models. You're not paying for the models, you're paying to support the creator. And the creator gives you access to their back catalog. So where does this leave us with Creality? What Creality is doing is blatant theft. They are taking parts that somebody else designed. They are calling it their own. And they're saying, we don't care. What can we as makers do? Get noisy, get loud, get angry, get out there, do something. I'm tired of seeing good people have their hard work stolen from them because somebody else doesn't respect the time, effort, and energy that they put into it. Right? I don't think I necessarily care as much about something like stealing from a Marvel because they're a multi-billion-dollar production, whatever company. They're not going to notice a couple $100. A couple $100 is a rounding error, right? But when you're a designer like the individual that first kind of brought the Creality stuff to light, I forget his name. It's way off in the comments by now. That is someone who will feel the pain of not having that support. And that also brings a point of, if Creality's been doing it, what is ever going to say they're not going to move to more larger base creators? They're not going to move to real protected things. How do we stop this? To me, it is, we have to get out there. We have to talk about it. We have to have honest conversations that, yeah, there's some theft that is going on in this industry. And some of it we've justified to ourselves, but some of it we don't. Now, what you justify and what you don't is between you and yours. Apparently, John Stern says, oh, I had a time lapse of the articulated dragon, provided a link, and people asked for the STL. Although I'll say it was only a few people that asked for the STL, and the video has 275,000 views. One. Nice. I think our biggest video has like 12,000 views, and that's on YouTube. I don't really understand TikTok. Yeah, there's a problem, right? All you got to do is ask. Like Fotis says, all everyone has to do is ask. He doesn't say no a lot. His goal is to get his stuff out there so that people can see it. If Creality had reached out to the creators and said, hey, we'd love to use your models in our newsletter. We'd love to repost your models. Would you be willing to start an account on our website? I don't think there are any problems here. As much as people shit on Thangs, I think Thangs kind of did this the right way. They reached out to creators, said, we would love to have your stuff on our website, and we'll actually pay you to have it there. It's kind of cool. Now, of course, none of that is public. We don't know what Thangs is paying, and I hope to have, I've been in contact with Thangs about their policies for paying people and all of that, and I hope to be able to talk about this more publicly soon. But it does come down to what is your level of desire for intellectual property. How do you want to protect it. And if you say, I don't care about IP, I don't know what to tell you. I care about it a lot, but I also know that I don't understand it the way that I want to. I am not an expert in IP. I have 2 business degrees. I am not a lawyer. And I would guess that most people here in the comments are the same way, right? You're not lawyers. If you are, please hit us up. I will also say, if you're still here hanging out and you want to come on, be a guest at some point, email me, DM me on Twitter, whatever. I'd love to have more guests. Filament Stories, if you're still here, I want to have you as a guest on the podcast. Shane, I'd love to have you as a podcast guest once you get settled in overseas. And Fotis, I've already told you I want you to be a guest, but you're a stick in the mud. You don't want to come on. We have to put our foots down. We have to build a system that covers this. We have to look at starting I don't know whether it's a certification system, whatever it might be. We have to find a way to build something that sets a standard for what we believe is acceptable and what we believe is not. If Creality wants to use a model that we create on a newsletter, on their website, give proper credit, let us upload it so when it downloads, it's something that helps us out with our SEO, I think that's fine. They're asking the questions they need to ask. But if you're doing we'll ask for forgiveness later, or we're just not going to respond to people, I've got a problem with that. Shane says he can work something out with the time difference and all. Buddy, no big rush. We'll get that sorted. Filament Story said, still here, still unable to type on an iPad. We'll get it sorted, don't worry. I want to do something, and I know that I'm not alone here. I know that a lot of you say that we've got a problem in this industry, and if we don't start doing something, then we are destined to do nothing. We know what inaction looks like. We know exactly what it looks like and what happens when inaction gets out of control. But we have a duty to not only ourselves, to our fellow makers, we have a duty to those that we support. The ones that we give money to every month to support them in what they do. We want to push more people to sign up for Fotis' Patreon. I don't want to push people to go download his models for free somewhere else. I want people to support Fotis, help him put food on his plate, help him feed his family, to help him feel more confident in what he does, to be happy with this industry and not loathe it. I want to help inspire more people to become 3D modelers, to say, hey, you're hiring 3D modelers. Do you want to work with me? And I'll be like, send me a resume. Hey, Andre, thank you. I appreciate the support. Says hi from Canada. Enjoy your videos. Appreciate it. I guess I just don't know where we start. If you are someone that wants to try to enact change here, email me, youtube@3dmusketeers.com. It comes directly to my personal inbox. I don't want to give out my company email. It's not that hard to figure out, but I don't want to give it out on YouTube. So email youtube@3dmusketeers.com if you want to be involved. I want to do something specifically regarding intellectual property where we can set a standard, like ASTM sets standards for, the subtractive market. They're doing some stuff in the additive market as well. I want to look at setting a standard and look at maybe a new way to look at Creative Commons, because Creative Commons was like back in the 80s is when it was first kind of brought to the table. It has not changed with the times, and we have to get a better understanding of what this stuff means and what it means to us, and get better descriptions. And yes, that means they're going to get longer, but we have to look at defining what it means and then creating some sort of regulatory body that has funding that can assist those people that are being stolen from to protect their intellectual property. Because guess what? Suing Creality is not going to be easy. It's going to require hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's going to require an attorney in China, and it's going to require people to go there. And unless you've got shitloads of money laying around, this isn't a possibility. And hey, if you do have shitloads of money laying around, I guess I should remind you that we do have a Patreon. If you do want to support us, you can do so at patreon.com/3D Musketeers for as low as $1 a month to help us kind of make videos like this, where I know I'm going to catch a lot of shit for this live stream and for the Wednesday video where we're going to talk all about IP, where I'm going to dive a lot deeper into the lawsuit regarding Creality and Artec, because it's a docket. It's public domain at this point. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Filament Story says, nice plug. Thank you. I'm trying to get better at this stuff, right? Integrating the call to actions. But that's not what this is about. I want to enact change. I want to be the catalyst. I want to help. I want to have a designer come to me and say, Grant, I need your help. John Stern says, China won't pay enough attention to IP unless other companies start stealing Chinese IP. Japan in the 70s was the same. James Carvin says, amen. I can't say you're wrong, but I can't validly prove you're right. And that's kind of where I sit with a lot of this IP stuff. I don't know it enough to talk about it and say, I'm the expert, because I'm not the expert. I'm the guy with the voice that's not afraid to piss other people off. I'm not afraid to piss people off. I'm not afraid. Because when you get mad about this, it means that you feel something about this. I am mad. I am mad for others. I'm mad because I don't know what to do. But I believe that intellectual property matters. And I believe that blatant theft from small makers is a big fucking problem. I believe that theft, when it is looked at and a DMCA takedown is issued and it is ignored, is even a further problem, because we all know they're getting them. They're actively choosing to ignore them. And that's a problem. So how do we solve this? We call them out on their BS. We sit atop our perches of lots of Twitter followers, lots of influence in certain industries, and we build our armies to make sure that our voices are heard. I don't have a big community. Unfortunately, I have not done a good job of being a part of the community. I spend a lot of time trying to keep the business afloat than I do trying to build in the community itself. And that's, well, it is the way that it is right now. I got to make sure I can keep the lights on before I can make sure the community loves us, right? We need to do something. I'm going to do something, and I will challenge other creators out there to do it, and specifically Naomi Wu. Naomi is someone that has the ability to walk into Creality and say enough is enough. Naomi speaks the native language. Naomi, I believe, is relatively local to Creality. And I'm sure there are others too, but Naomi is the largest one there. I would love to see. Mr. T says, get Anonymous on the case. I don't think we're there yet, right? This isn't... Anonymous, to me, is a organization that deals with, you know, like, massive public health problems, right? Where they are currently fighting on the side of Zelensky and Ukrainian people. That is much more important for Anonymous to me than this. But you know what? If they're looking for a good cause, it's a pretty good cause. The maker community needs someone that's going to stand up for us, say, I need your help. I am David. I need a Goliath so that we can fight side by side. Well, I'm Grant, but you get it. Jacob Stern says people need to file utility patent in China. They actually honor that one and it prevents others from producing your item. It's how a lot of clones get created. If you outsource your production to China without one, the plant will file and block you from enforcing it. It's fair. Chinese patents are a problem. Similar to United States patents, you must also be able to enforce them, and that means you have to have people that are actively looking for infringing stuff, aka cost a shitload of money. Mr. T, I see you got the Guy Fawkes mask. If you happen to know people that see that this is a worthy cause, I'd be happy to talk to them. I'm not here to start a brigade, right? That's not what this is about. But I do need people to stand up for what they believe is right. If we don't stand up for what we believe is right, then we are no better than the ones that are stealing. That's my personal opinion. I think we kind of beaten this horse enough. If you guys have any other topics you want to kind of cover regarding IP, I'll give you, a minute or two to throw them in the comments. But I think otherwise we're going to wrap this one up. If you're new here, get subscribed, leave a like. Appreciate the support. And if you do want to support us directly, Patreon, channel memberships, and all that kind of stuff is always available. And we're near the middle of the month, so if you're, maybe this month's not the best, the beginning of the month is always the best time to support your creators on Patreon because Patreon charges you on the beginning of the month. It's the dumbest thing. I don't like it. Will Strickland says Chinese trademark law is also quite interesting, that he learned a bit about it from the scramble to trademark every Voron term over there. Yeah, the Voron community is still kind of one that I'm not a huge fan of. They claim they're not a business, but they're trademarking things. They claim they're not a business, yet they're working directly with suppliers. They claim this, that, and the other. And they're also screwing their suppliers by making adjustments to their bill of materials without giving suppliers enough time to remove all their old inventory and sell it and be able to get in new inventory. And that's just not cool, right? That's not how business is done. And I think the Voron community would benefit from someone that is going to run it like a business. And that maybe is a non-profit or a not-for-profit business. But yeah, I don't know. I looked at doing a Voron a while ago, and I got yelled at and told to leave the Discord server because I asked a question that was apparently explained in the very convoluted build manual that I didn't want to read through to find the answer to a question that I could just ask in a Discord server that would take 3 seconds to answer rather than 45 minutes to an hour of my time trying to find inside of a thing. But I digress. John Stern says go to Rat Rig. Actually, I'm going to be going with Fenrir and Emir from Maker Viking. We are going to be doing builds on those. Hopefully, we get to be in the beta team for that and be able to build one before it's officially released. I think that would be a lot of fun. I've told that a lot of the drama in the Voron community has kind of died down, but I'd rather support friends of mine. Like Maker Viking Thomas is a phenomenal friend of mine. I love the guy. He's awesome. I hang out with him almost every single day in his Discord. And I want to support him because I believe that he's actually doing something amazing. And that's more important to me, is to support those that are also supporting me. And that also brings to IP, right? I want to help Viking build his IP appropriately by utilizing this platform of the YouTube channel by, building it, giving advice, because I am the average builder, right? So it's my personal thought there. I don't know, guys. Let me know your thoughts. I'm kind of at wit's end because I want to do something, but I'm not exactly certain what to do. And I feel like I'm not the only one that's in this situation. So if you think you've got a good idea of how to deal with these intellectual property issues, put them in the comments. If you want to get involved in a means to build a standard regarding intellectual property, maybe a revamp to Creative Commons and open source and how we handle that stuff, please email us, youtube@3dmusketeers.com. Links are in the description. I would love to have an honest-to-God conversation with people about this. I think that's important. Because if we continue down the path that we're going right now, these problems don't change. We don't enact change, and we continue bitching about the same problems without ever trying to make something work. And that, my friends, is a problem. So, with all that being said, what am I going to do? I'm going to make a video on it. The Wednesday video is going to be all about the Creality cloud issue, as well as their lawsuit with Artec. I've wanted to do a video on the lawsuit, but I kind of needed an impetus to get it there. This impetus of the community really getting pissed off about this is something that is enough to get me motivated to do that video. We're going to talk about the Honda takedown as well, just a little bit in there, but the video is going to be primarily about Creality. If you guys want to contribute to that, please just DM me on Twitter or something like that. And if you want to do a quote about it, if you want to have some written pieces that I can put in there and talk about, that'd be amazing. I would absolutely love your support for that. But that's all I have for you guys today. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. Practice proper IP protocol. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. All right, now we're waiting for comments. Joseph Greiner says, the biggest problem with Creative Commons is the fact that the community has to enforce it, and 3D printing doesn't really have a community. That's a good one. I like that one. That's a good point. I'm going to use that point in, I'm literally copying that comment. That is going to be my closer for that Wednesday video. And I'm going to make sure that I give credit, because that is how this stuff goes. All right, guys. We'll see you later. Have a good weekend. If you celebrate Easter, happy Easter. If not, candy's on sale Monday morning.